The transport ship Meridian shuddered as another plasma bolt struck its weakened shields. Captain Zara Chen gripped her command chair, watching the tactical display with growing concern. 3 Kitharan battlecruisers had them surrounded, their sleek black hulls bristling with weapons that could tear through the Meridian's defenses like paper. "Shields down to 30%, reported Lieutenant Torres from the engineering station. His voice strained. "Another hit like that and we're finished." Zara's mind raced through their options. The Meridian was a civilian transport, carrying 500 refugees from the recently fallen colony of New Geneva. They had medical supplies, food, and hope for a new life on the Outer Rim worlds. What they didn't have was weapons capable of fighting off 3 of the galaxy's most advanced warships. The Kitharans had been expanding their territory for the past 5 years, consuming human colonies with ruthless efficiency. Their technology was superior in every way that mattered. Their ships were faster, their weapons more powerful, and their tactics flawless. Humanity had lost dozens of worlds to their advance, and the Galactic Council seemed powerless to stop them. "Sir, incoming transmission from the lead Kitharan vessel," announced Communications Officer Park, her hands trembling slightly over her console. "Put it through," Zara said, straightening in her chair. She had dealt with Kitharans before, though never in such a desperate situation. The main screen flickered, revealing the angular features of a Kitharan commander. His skin was pale gray, almost translucent, and his large black eyes held no warmth or mercy. When he spoke, his voice carried the typical Kitharan accent, crisp and emotionless. "Human vessel, you are in violation of Kitharan space. Surrender your ship and prepare to be boarded. Your passengers will be processed according to our protocols." Zara knew what processed meant. The Kitharans didn't take prisoners in the traditional sense. They studied humans like laboratory specimens, learning everything they could about human physiology and psychology before disposing of them. The lucky ones died quickly. "This is Captain Chen of the transport ship Meridian," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "We are carrying civilian refugees, including children. We pose no threat to your operations." The Kitharan commander's expression didn't change. "Your species' capacity for violence is well documented. All humans are potential threats. You have 30 seconds to comply." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Zara looked around at her crew, seeing fear and determination in equal measure. These were good people, loyal and brave, but they weren't soldiers. Neither was she, for that matter. She had been a merchant captain before the war, running cargo between the inner colonies. Command of a refugee transport was never supposed to involve combat decisions. "Captain," whispered Ensign Rodriguez from the navigation station, "what are your orders?" Before Zara could respond, another voice spoke from the back of the bridge. "If I may suggest something, Captain." Everyone turned to look at Dr. Sarah Martinez, the ship's chief medical officer. She was a quiet woman in her early 30s, with brown hair always pulled back in a practical ponytail, and intelligent green eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She had joined the crew just 3 weeks ago at the New Geneva evacuation, claiming her previous ship had been destroyed. Her medical credentials were impeccable, and they desperately needed a doctor for the refugees. "Doctor, this isn't really a medical situation," Zara said gently. Sarah stepped forward, her hands clasped behind her back. "Actually, Captain, it might be. I've been studying the Kitharan physiology since I came aboard. Their neural pathways are fascinating, particularly how they process sensory information." Lieutenant Torres looked confused. "What does that have to do with 3 battle cruisers about to blow us apart?" Sarah moved to the science station and began entering commands with surprising familiarity. The Kitharans rely heavily on their advanced sensors and targeting systems. Their eyesight is actually quite poor compared to humans, which is why they developed such sophisticated electronic aids. 20 seconds to surrender deadline, announced Park, her voice tight with anxiety. "Doctor, I appreciate your scientific curiosity, but," Zara began. "Captain, trust me," Sarah interrupted, her fingers flying over the controls. "I can create a localized electromagnetic pulse that will temporarily disable their targeting systems without harming their life support. It will give us a window to escape." Torres stared at her. "That's impossible. The power requirements alone would drain our entire energy grid, and we don't have the right equipment to generate that kind of focused EMP." Sarah paused and looked directly at Zara. "I can modify our medical scanners to create the necessary field resonance. The technique is unconventional, but it will work." There was something in Sarah's eyes, a confidence that went beyond medical training. Zara had commanded ships long enough to recognize when someone was holding back important information. But with 10 seconds left and 3 enemy warships closing in, she didn't have the luxury of asking questions. "Do it," Zara ordered. Sarah nodded and began entering a complex sequence of commands. Her movements were precise and efficient, like someone who had performed similar operations many times before. As she worked, she spoke quickly to the bridge crew. "I need everyone to route auxiliary power to the medical bay. Mr. Torres, shut down all non-essential systems. Ms. Park, prepare to broadcast a distress signal on all frequencies the moment I activate the pulse." 5 seconds, Torres announced, sweat beading on his forehead. "Ready?" Sarah said, her hand hovering over the final activation control. The Kitharan ships had moved into attack formation, their weapons charging for the killing blow. On the tactical display, Zara could see the energy signatures building toward critical levels. "Now," Zara commanded. Sarah pressed the control, and every light on the bridge flickered. The meridian groaned as power flowed through systems never designed to handle such loads. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, one by one, the Kitharan ships went dark. Their engines continued running, but their weapons powered down and their formation became ragged as their navigation systems failed. The lead ship drifted slightly off course, its commander presumably struggling to understand what had happened. "All stop," Zara ordered. "Prepare for emergency jump to hyperspace." As the Meridian engaged its jump drive, Zara looked at Sarah with new eyes. The quiet doctor was calmly checking her equipment as if disabling 3 enemy warships was a routine medical procedure. "Doctor," Zara said quietly, "we need to talk." Sarah met her gaze and nodded. "Yes, Captain. I believe we do." The ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying its refugees to safety and its captain toward a truth that would change everything she thought she knew about the war against the Kitharans. Dr. Sarah Martinez was not the simple medical officer she appeared to be, and her secrets might be the key to humanity's survival. But secrets, Zara knew, always came with a price. Captain Zara Chen found Dr. Sarah Martinez in the medical bay, 2 hours after their escape from the Kitharan patrol. The refugees had been treated for minor injuries from the battle, and Sarah was now alone, carefully cleaning medical instruments with methodical precision. Her hands were steady, but Zara noticed the slight tension in her shoulders. "That was some impressive improvisation, Doctor," Zara said, closing the door behind her and activating the privacy mode. "Care to explain how a medical officer knows how to disable Kitharan military technology?" Sarah didn't look up from her work. "I told you I studied their physiology. Understanding their technology is part of understanding how they function. Sarah." Zara's voice was gentle but firm. "I've been commanding ships for 15 years. I know when someone is hiding something important. What you did out there wasn't medical knowledge. That was military-grade electronic warfare." Sarah finally set down the instrument she was cleaning and turned to face Zara. Her green eyes held a mixture of resignation and something that might have been relief. "My name isn't Sarah Martinez," she said quietly. "It's Dr. Sarah Chen. I'm a xenobiologist and former intelligence operative for the Terran Defense Command. I've been undercover for the past 3 years studying Kitharan technology and biology." Zara felt a chill run down her spine. "Chen, are you related to—" "Admiral Marcus Chen was my father," Sarah confirmed. "He commanded the 5th Fleet when the Kitharans first appeared. He was killed at the Battle of Proxima Station, along with 40,000 other servicemen and women." The pieces began falling into place in Zara's mind. Admiral Chen had been a legend in the Terran fleet, known for his tactical brilliance and his fierce dedication to protecting human colonies. His death had been a devastating blow to morale, particularly because his entire fleet had been destroyed by a single Kitharan dreadnought. The official report said the 5th Fleet was overwhelmed by superior technology, Zara said. Carefully, Sarah's expression hardened. The official reports were wrong. My father's fleet was betrayed. Someone provided the Kitharans with our tactical data, ship specifications, and battle plans. The attack wasn't a military engagement. It was an execution. She moved to a sealed cabinet and entered a complex access code. Inside, Zara could see equipment that definitely wasn't standard medical gear. There were advanced scanning devices, data storage units, and what looked like weapons components. I've spent 3 years infiltrating Kithaeron operations, learning their language, studying their culture, and documenting their technology, Sarah continued. What I've discovered changes everything we thought we knew about this war. Zara sat down heavily in a nearby chair. Tell me. Sarah pulled out a datapad and activated a holographic display. The image showed a 3-dimensional map of known space, with human colonies marked in blue and Kithaeron territory in red. But there were also green markers scattered throughout both regions. The Kithaerons aren't just expanding randomly, Sarah explained. They're following a specific pattern, targeting colonies with particular resources and strategic value. Someone has been providing them with detailed intelligence about human settlements, defense capabilities, and resource locations. You're talking about collaboration, Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. Humans working with the Kithaerons. Not just collaboration, integration. There's a human faction that believes humanity's only chance for survival is to ally with the Kithaerons. They call themselves the Unity Movement, and they have operatives at the highest levels of the Terran government and military. The holographic display shifted, showing intercepted communications and financial records. Zara recognized several names from the data, including politicians and military officers she had seen on news broadcasts. They believe the Kithaerons are evolutionarily superior, Sarah continued. Their technology, their longevity, their telepathic abilities. The Unity Movement thinks that by proving humanity's worth as junior partners, they can secure a place in the Kithaeron Empire. Zara studied the data, her mind reeling. But the Kithaerons don't take partners. They conquer and study their enemies. Exactly. The Unity Movement is being used, but they don't realize it. The Kithaerons have no intention of honoring any agreement. They're learning everything they can about human psychology, technology, and society. Once they have what they need, they'll eliminate the collaborators along with everyone else. Sarah activated another display, this one showing biological data and genetic analyses. But here's what the Kithaerons don't know. Humans have advantages they haven't recognized yet. Our immune systems are incredibly adaptable. Our problem-solving abilities are more flexible than theirs. And we have something they completely lack, and which is unpredictability. Kithaeron society is based on logic and predetermined responses. They can predict human behavior in most situations, because we tend to follow logical patterns. But some humans can break those patterns, can think in ways that their computers can't anticipate. Zara thought about the battle they had just escaped, like using medical scanners to create an electromagnetic pulse. That's a simple example. I've been developing techniques that exploit the gaps in their predictive models, but I need help to put them into practice on a larger scale. The door chimed and Lieutenant Torres's voice came through the intercom. Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Starbase Alpha. Admiral Harrison wants to speak with you immediately. Zara looked at Sarah, who had gone pale. Admiral Harrison is one of the names on your list, isn't he? Sarah nodded grimly. He's been feeding intelligence to the Kithaerons for 2 years. If he knows we escaped that patrol, he'll want to know how. Captain? Torres's voice came again, more urgent now. Zara made a decision that would change the course of the war. Tell Admiral Harrison that we're experiencing communication difficulties due to damage from the Kithaeron attack. We'll contact him once repairs are complete. She turned back to Sarah. How many people do you trust in the Terran fleet? Maybe a dozen scattered across different ships and stations. Most of them don't know about the others. We need to change that. Can you contact them securely? Sarah hesitated. Captain, what are you thinking? I'm thinking that if the official channels are compromised, we need to create unofficial ones. You've been fighting this war alone for 3 years. It's time you had backup. For the first time since Zara had met her, Sarah smiled. It transformed her entire face, revealing the determined young woman beneath the careful medical officer persona. There's something else you should know, Sarah said. The technique I used to disable those Kithaeron ships, it won't work a second time. They'll adapt their systems to compensate. But I have other ideas, things that could give us a real advantage if we can implement them properly, such as the Kithaerons have a critical weakness in their command structure. Their ships are controlled by a central AI that coordinates all tactical decisions. If we can disrupt that AI at the right moment, we can turn their own tactics against them. Zara leaned forward, intrigued. How? That's where it gets complicated. The AI isn't just a computer program. It's partially biological, integrated with Kithaeron neural tissue. To effect it, we need to understand both their technology and their biology. And you do? Sarah's smile became predatory. Captain, I've been inside a Catherian research facility. I've seen how they think, how they operate, and most importantly, how they underestimate us. They think humans are primitive and predictable. She closed the holographic displays and sealed the equipment back in its hidden compartment. They're about to learn how wrong they are. As the Meridian continued its journey through hyperspace, carrying its precious cargo of refugees to safety, Captain Zara Chen began to understand that she was now part of something much larger than a simple rescue mission. Dr. Sarah Chen had given her a chance to strike back at the enemies who had terrorized humanity for years. The question was whether they could stay alive long enough to use it. The remote mining station of Kepler 442b had seen better days. Its docking bays were scarred from countless meteor impacts, and the atmospheric processors wheezed like old men climbing stairs. But it was off the main shipping routes and far from any Catherian patrols, which made it perfect for Captain Zara Chen's purposes. Dr. Sarah Chen stood beside her as they watched the Meridian settle into the station's largest dock. Through the viewport, they could see other ships arriving, each one carrying people who had answered Sarah's carefully coded messages sent through secure channels over the past week. Nervous? Zara asked quietly. Sarah adjusted her wire-rimmed glasses, a habit Zara had noticed when the doctor was thinking deeply. Terrified would be more accurate. These people have been fighting a secret war for years. Some of them don't trust anyone anymore. The first to arrive had been Commander Elena Vasquez, a sturdy woman with graying hair and the kind of scars that came from close combat. She commanded a modified patrol ship called the Defiant, and brought with her a crew of former intelligence operatives who had discovered the Unity movement's betrayal the hard way. Next came Dr. James Park, a soft-spoken engineer who had spent 2 years working undercover in Catherian research facilities. His ship, the Prometheus, looked like a civilian freighter, but contained some of the most advanced scanning equipment in human space. The most surprising arrival was Captain Marcus Reed, a young man barely out of the academy who commanded the destroyer Retribution. His entire family had been killed in the Catherian attack on New Geneva, and he had been hunting collaborators ever since. "That's everyone," Sarah said, as the last ship powered down its engines. 12 ships, 87 crew members, and enough combined knowledge to either save humanity or get us all killed. They made their way to the station's main conference room, a cramped space that smelled of recycled air and industrial lubricants. As people filed in, Zara could feel the tension in the room. These were individuals who had been operating alone or in small groups, trusting no one and always looking over their shoulders. Sarah stood at the front of the room, her medical officer's uniform replaced by a simple gray jumpsuit. She looked young and vulnerable compared to the hardened veterans around her. But when she spoke, her voice carried absolute authority. 3 years ago, my father's fleet was destroyed at Proxima Station, she began. The official reports blamed superior Catherian technology, but we all know the truth. Admiral Chen's ships were betrayed by humans who thought they could buy safety by serving alien masters. Commander Vasquez leaned forward. We've all lost people to the Unity movement. The question is, what do you propose we do about it? Sarah activated a holographic projector, filling the center of the room with a 3-dimensional map of local space. Red markers indicated Catherian positions, while blue showed human colonies and outposts. But there were also purple markers scattered throughout the display. These are confirmed Unity movement facilities, Sarah explained. Research stations, communication hubs, and coordination centers. They've built a shadow network that spans half of human space. Dr. Park studied the display intently. The security around these facilities is impressive. Most of them are protected by both human and Catherian forces. Which brings us to the real problem, Sarah continued. We can't fight both the Catherians and the Unity movement using conventional tactics. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and outmaneuvered. We need to think differently. She manipulated the display, zooming in on a particular sector near the Catherian border. This is the Arcturus system. Intelligence suggests there's a major Unity movement facility here, working directly with Catherian researchers on something called Project Genesis. Captain Reed's jaw tightened. What kind of project? We don't know the details, but intercepted communications suggest it involves human genetic material and Catherian biotechnology. The implications are disturbing. Zara felt a chill as she studied the tactical data. You're talking about biological warfare, or something worse. The Catharans have always been interested in human adaptability and problem-solving capabilities. Project Genesis might be an attempt to combine human creativity with Catharan longevity and telepathic abilities. Commander Vasquez stood up, her expression grim. A hybrid species under Catharan control. They wouldn't need to conquer humanity anymore. They could simply replace us. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about military conquest or political control. The Catharans were planning the complete transformation of human civilization. "So what's the plan?" asked Lieutenant Torres, who had been quietly taking notes throughout the meeting. "We can't assault a facility that's protected by Catharan warships." Sarah smiled, and Zara recognized the same predatory expression she had seen in the medical bay. "We're not going to assault it. We're going to infiltrate it." She changed the display to show detailed schematics of the Arcturus facility. The Unity movement believes they're partners in this project, but they're actually test subjects. The Catharans are studying human behavior, learning how we think and react under stress. That's useful information, but it doesn't get us inside, Dr. Park pointed out. Actually, it does. Sarah highlighted a section of the facility. The research division requires regular deliveries of biological samples and medical supplies. Dr. Martinez and her team have been providing those supplies for the past 6 months. Zara understood immediately. You want to impersonate your own cover identity. The real Dr. Martinez died in the New Geneva evacuation, but the Unity movement doesn't know that. Her supply ship is still expected to make regular deliveries. If we can modify one of our vessels to match their specifications. Captain Reed was already running calculations on his tablet. The Retribution could be disguised as a medical supply ship. Her cargo bays are the right size, and we can modify her external appearance. What about the crew? Commander Vasquez asked. The Catharans will scan everyone who comes aboard. Sarah's expression grew serious. That's where things get dangerous. I'll need to go in alone, posing as Dr. Martinez. The rest of you will have to stay back and wait for my signal. The room erupted in protests, but Sarah held up her hand for silence. Listen to me. I've been inside Catharan facilities before. I know how they think, how they operate. But more importantly, I know what they're afraid of. She manipulated the display again, showing biological data and neural pathway diagrams. The Catharans are telepathic, but their abilities are limited. They can read surface thoughts and emotions, but they can't penetrate deep psychological barriers. Humans who have experienced severe trauma often develop mental defenses that block telepathic intrusion. Zara began to understand. You're going to use your father's death as a shield. The grief and anger from losing him, combined with 3 years of undercover work, have created natural barriers in my mind. The Catharans will sense something, but they'll interpret it as normal human emotional scarring. Dr. Park looked skeptical. That's a huge risk. If they detect the deception, then you blow the facility and make sure the research data doesn't fall into the wrong hands, Sarah said simply. But I don't think it will come to that. I've been preparing for this mission for 3 years. She deactivated the holographic display and looked around the room. I need to know if you're all willing to take this risk. If we succeed, we'll not only stop Project Genesis, but also gain access to Catharan research data that could change the course of the war. One by one, the assembled captains and crew members nodded their agreement. These were people who had already lost everything to the Catharan invasion and the Unity movement's betrayal. They had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. When do we leave? Commander Vasquez asked. Sarah checked her chronometer. The next supply delivery is scheduled for 72 hours from now. That gives us time to modify the Retribution and prepare the infiltration equipment. As the meeting broke up and people began discussing technical details, Zara pulled Sarah aside. Are you sure about this? Going in alone against both Catharans and human collaborators? Sarah's green eyes held a determination that reminded Zara of the legendary Admiral Chen. Captain, my father spent his entire career protecting human colonies from alien threats. He died believing he had failed. This is my chance to prove that his sacrifice meant something. And if you don't make it out, Sarah smiled sadly, then make sure someone tells the story of what we tried to do here. Humanity deserves to know that not all of us gave up without a fight. As they prepared for the most dangerous mission of their lives, none of them could have imagined that Sarah's infiltration of the Arcturus facility would uncover secrets that went far beyond Project Genesis. The Kitharans had been planning something much more ambitious than anyone suspected, and time was running out to stop them. The modified retribution approached the Arcturus facility exactly 72 hours after the secret meeting at Kepler 442b. Captain Reed had done remarkable work, disguising his destroyer as a medical supply vessel, complete with false identification codes and cargo manifests. From the outside, it looked like any other civilian transport making routine deliveries to a research station. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in the ship's small medical bay, reviewing her cover identity one final time. Dr. Elena Martinez had been a respected xenobiologist specializing in alien physiology research. Her credentials were impeccable, her security clearance legitimate, and her death in the New Geneva evacuation had gone unnoticed by the Unity Movement's bureaucracy. "Incoming transmission from the facility," announced the ship's communications officer. "They're requesting docking clearance and cargo verification." Sarah took a deep breath and activated the recording system. She had practiced Dr. Martinez's voice patterns and mannerisms for weeks, studying every available video record of the woman's presentations and interviews. "Arcturus Control. This is Dr. Martinez aboard the medical supply vessel Hippocrates, requesting permission to dock at Bay 7. I have priority biological samples and equipment for Project Genesis." There was a pause, then a human voice responded. "Dr. Martinez, welcome back. We've been expecting you. Proceed to Bay 7 and prepare for standard security screening." The Retribution maneuvered toward the docking bay, its sensors recording everything about the facility's defenses. What they saw was disturbing. The station was much larger than intelligence reports had suggested, with multiple research wings and what appeared to be manufacturing facilities. Kytheran ships patrolled the perimeter, their sleek forms moving in precise formation. "Look at the size of this place," whispered Captain Reed from the bridge. "They're not just doing research here. They're mass-producing something." Sarah studied the tactical displays through the medical bay's small monitor. "Stay focused on the mission. Once I'm inside, maintain position and monitor all communications. If something goes wrong, don't try to rescue me. Just make sure the data gets back to Captain Chen." The ship settled into the docking bay with barely a tremor. Through the viewport, Sarah could see Unity Movement personnel in crisp white uniforms directing the docking procedure. But there were also Kitharan overseers present, their tall, angular forms unmistakable even at a distance. Sarah gathered her medical kit and sample cases, checking that her hidden scanning equipment was properly concealed. The biological samples were real, taken from volunteers among the refugee population. The Kitharans would expect Dr. Martinez to bring genuine human genetic material for their research. The airlock cycled, and Sarah stepped onto the station wearing Dr. Martinez's identity like a carefully tailored disguise. She walked with the confident stride of someone who belonged here, someone who had made this journey dozens of times before. "Dr. Martinez," a cheerful voice called out across the docking bay. A young man in a Unity Movement uniform approached, his smile genuine and welcoming. "I'm Dr. Richard Stone, your new liaison. Dr. Hendricks was transferred to another project last week." Sarah extended her hand, maintaining her cover. "Dr. Stone, pleasure to meet you. I hope Dr. Hendricks is well." "Oh yes, he's been assigned to the Genesis manufacturing facility on Kepler Prime. Quite an honor, actually." The Kitharan researchers were very impressed with his work here. As they walked through the station's corridors, Sarah used her hidden sensors to map the facility's layout. The technology was impressive, with Kitharan and human systems integrated in ways that suggested years of collaborative development. But something felt wrong about the integration. The human components seemed designed to fail after a certain period, as if they were meant to be temporary. "The Kitharans are particularly excited about your latest samples," Dr. Stone continued as they entered a lift. "They believe you may have identified the genetic markers they've been searching for." "The adaptability genes," Sarah replied, drawing on Dr. Martinez's research notes. "The sequences that allow humans to survive in hostile environments." "Exactly. Combined with Kitharan longevity factors, they could create beings capable of thriving on any world. Imagine the possibilities for galactic colonization." The lift opened onto a research level that took Sarah's breath away. The corridors were lined with laboratories containing equipment that was decades ahead of anything she had seen before. Through transparent walls, She could see Kithran researchers working alongside human scientists, their movements coordinated with an efficiency that was almost supernatural. But what disturbed her most were the test subjects. In sealed chambers throughout the research wing, she could see humans in various stages of what could only be described as transformation. Some appeared normal except for the monitoring equipment attached to their bodies. Others showed physical changes that made her stomach turn. The volunteer program has been incredibly successful, Dr. Stone explained, noticing her attention. People are eager to participate in the next stage of human evolution. Sarah forced herself to nod enthusiastically. How wonderful. The Kitharans must be pleased with the progress. Oh, they are. Commander Zethkar has been particularly complimentary about the research team's dedication. They arrived at a central laboratory where Sarah was introduced to the research staff. Most were human, their faces showing the kind of fervent dedication she had seen in religious converts. But there were also 3 Kitharan researchers present, their large black eyes studying her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. The lead Kitharan, presumably Commander Zethkar, approached with movements that were unnaturally fluid. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in her bones. Dr. Martinez, your contributions to Project Genesis have been invaluable. We are eager to examine your latest genetic samples. Sarah handed over the sample cases, maintaining her professional demeanor, despite the waves of telepathic pressure she could feel emanating from the Kitharan. Her mental barriers held, but she could sense him probing at the edges of her consciousness. I believe you'll find these samples particularly interesting, she said. They're from individuals who survived the New Geneva evacuation under extreme conditions. Commander Zethkar's eyes seemed to brighten. Survivors. Yes, we have noted that humans who experience severe trauma often develop enhanced adaptive capabilities. These samples will be very useful for Phase 3 of the project. Phase 3? Sarah asked, careful to sound curious rather than alarmed. Dr. Stone stepped forward eagerly. The final integration phase. Once we've perfected the genetic modifications, we'll begin implementing them on a planetary scale. Entire human colonies will be transformed into the new hybrid species. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's climate controls. How ambitious. The logistics alone must be staggering. Actually, the delivery system is quite elegant, Commander Zethkar said. We have developed an aerosol compound that can modify human DNA within hours of exposure. It will be deployed through atmospheric processors on target worlds. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place in Sarah's mind with terrifying clarity. This wasn't just about creating hybrid soldiers or research subjects. The Kitharans were planning to transform the entire human species into something they could control directly. Fascinating, she managed to say. When do you expect to begin deployment? The first test world will be treated within the next standard week, Dr. Stone replied. After that, we'll begin systematic treatment of all human colonies in this sector. Sarah's hidden recording equipment captured every word, but she knew the intelligence would be useless if she couldn't get it back to the Resistance. She needed to find a way to leave the station without arousing suspicion. I'd love to observe the final preparation phases, she said. Perhaps I could extend my stay for a few more days. Commander Zethkar studied her with those unsettling black eyes. That would be acceptable. Dr. Stone will arrange quarters for you. Your expertise in human genetic variation will be valuable as we finalize the compound. As Dr. Stone led her away to guest quarters, Sarah began planning her escape. She had the information the Resistance needed, but she also had an opportunity to do something more. If she could access the facility's main computer systems, she might be able to sabotage Project Genesis from the inside. But first, she needed to contact Captain Reed and warn him about what they were really facing. The Unity movement wasn't just collaborating with an alien invasion. They were participating in the complete transformation of humanity itself. That night, alone in her quarters, Sarah activated her hidden communicator and sent a coded message to the Retribution. The response came back quickly, confirming that Captain Chen and the other Resistance cells were standing by. Sarah stared out the viewport at the Kitharan patrol ships moving through space like predatory fish. In less than a week, the first human world would be transformed into something alien and unrecognizable, unless she could find a way to stop it. The young woman who had started this mission seeking answers about her father's death was about to become humanity's last hope for remaining human. The question was whether she could stay alive long enough to use the terrible knowledge she had gained. Dr. Sarah Chen had been on the Arcturus facility for 2 days when she discovered the manufacturing levels. What she found there made her realize that Project Genesis was even worse than she had imagined. The lower levels of the station hummed with activity as massive. Production lines created canisters of the aerosol compound. Each canister was the size of a small spacecraft and contained enough transformed genetic material to treat an entire world's atmosphere. Hundreds of them were being loaded onto Kithaeron transport ships for distribution across human space. Sarah stood on an observation deck overlooking the production floor, her hidden sensors recording everything. Beside her, Dr. Stone watched the operation with obvious pride. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said. "Each canister represents the next step in human evolution. No more wars, no more conflicts, no more suffering. Just perfect harmony under Kithaeron guidance." "The efficiency is remarkable," Sarah replied, fighting to keep the horror out of her voice. "How many worlds can be processed simultaneously?" "The initial deployment will cover 12 colony worlds," Dr. Stone explained. "Once we confirm the process is working correctly, we'll expand to the core systems. Earth itself will be among the final phase targets." Sarah's blood ran cold. Earth, humanity's birth world with its 8 billion inhabitants, was on the target list. The scope of the genocide was beyond anything she had imagined. "Dr. Stone," she said carefully, "have the volunteers experienced any negative side effects from the transformation process?" His smile faltered slightly. "There have been some adjustment issues. A small percentage of subjects show resistance to the genetic modifications, but Commander Zethkar assures us these problems will be resolved in the final formula." Through the observation window, Sarah could see human workers loading the canisters with mechanical precision. Their movements were too synchronized, too perfect. They weren't working together. They were being controlled together. "The transformed volunteers seem very focused," she observed. "Oh yes, the neural integration is the most remarkable aspect of the process. Once the genetic modifications take hold, subjects develop a direct connection to the Kithaeron collective consciousness. No more loneliness, no more confusion, no more individual suffering." Sarah understood now why her father's fleet had been betrayed so completely. The Unity movement wasn't just collaborating with the Kithaerons. They genuinely believed they were saving humanity. They couldn't see that what they called evolution was actually extinction. That evening, Sarah sat in her quarters reviewing the data she had collected. The production schedule showed that the first deployment ships would launch in less than 48 hours. Even if she could get word to the resistance immediately, there wasn't enough time to mount a conventional attack on the facility. She activated her communicator and sent a coded message to Captain Reed. The response came back within minutes, along with an encrypted file containing updated intelligence from the other resistance cells. What she read made her heart sink. Similar facilities had been discovered throughout human space, all operating on the same timeline. The Kithaerons weren't just planning to transform a few colonies. They were preparing for simultaneous deployment across the entire human sphere of influence. A soft chime indicated someone was at her door. Sarah quickly shut down her equipment and composed herself before answering. "Dr. Martinez?" It was Dr. Stone, looking excited and slightly nervous. "Commander Zethkar would like to see you in the primary research lab. He has something special to show you." Sarah followed him through the station's corridors, her mind racing through possibilities. Had they discovered her true identity? Was this a trap or genuine scientific enthusiasm? The primary research lab was the largest on the station, filled with equipment that combined Kithaeron biotechnology with human engineering. At the center of the room stood a massive cylindrical tank, filled with a glowing blue liquid. Suspended in the liquid was something that had once been human. "Magnificent, isn't it?" Commander Zethkar's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once as he approached from behind a bank of monitoring equipment. "This is the result of our latest breakthrough in the integration process." The thing in the tank was tall and elegant, with elongated limbs and pale, almost translucent skin. Its eyes were the size and color of Kithaeron eyes, but its bone structure remained fundamentally human. It was beautiful in an alien way and utterly terrifying. The volunteer was a young woman from the New Geneva evacuation, Dr. Stone explained with obvious excitement. She had remarkable genetic markers for adaptability. The transformation process enhanced those traits while adding Kithaeron longevity and telepathic capabilities. Sarah forced herself to examine the creature more closely. Has she retained her human consciousness? Her individual personality has been integrated into the collective, Commander Zethkar replied. She is now part of something greater than herself. Her memories, her experiences, her knowledge, all preserved but enhanced by connection to the Catharan Gestalt. Can she communicate? The Catharan commander made a gesture and the creature's eyes opened. When it spoke, the voice was hauntingly beautiful, with harmonics that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to the mind. I am Sarah. I was Sarah. I am more than Sarah now. I see the beauty of unity, the peace of collective purpose. The fear and loneliness of individual existence are gone. Sarah felt sick as she realized what she was looking at. This wasn't evolution or enhancement. It was the complete erasure of human identity, replacing individual consciousness with a collective intelligence under alien control. The aerosol compound will produce similar results, Commander Zethkar continued, though the physical transformation will be less dramatic. The mental integration is the truly important aspect. How long does the process take? Sarah asked, though she dreaded the answer. Complete neural integration occurs within 72 hours of exposure, Dr. Stone replied. Physical changes continue for several weeks, but the subject's consciousness joins the collective almost immediately. Sarah spent the next hour asking technical questions and taking notes, all while her hidden recording equipment captured every detail of the horrific process. When she finally returned to her quarters, she knew exactly what she had to do. The Resistance couldn't stop 12 simultaneous deployments, but she could stop this facility. The production lines, the research data, the deployment ships, all of it had to be destroyed before the canisters could be distributed. But destroying the facility would mean sacrificing herself and everyone else on the station, including the human workers who had no idea they were participating in the extinction of their own species. Sarah activated her communicator one final time and sent a detailed message to Captain Reed. She included everything she had learned about Project Genesis, the deployment schedule, and the location of other facilities. Most importantly, she included the technical specifications for the aerosol compound and its neutralization protocols. Then she began preparing for the most dangerous operation of her career. The station's power core was protected by multiple security systems, but Sarah had spent 3 years learning how Catharan technology worked. She knew their blind spots, their assumptions about human behavior, and most importantly, their overconfidence in their own superiority. She gathered the materials she would need: medical isotopes from her sample cases, components from her hidden scanning equipment, and chemicals from the station's medical supplies. Individually, they were harmless. Combined properly, they would create a cascading failure in the station's primary power system. As she worked through the night, Sarah thought about her father and the 40,000 people who had died with him at Proxima Station. They had died believing they were fighting for humanity's freedom. Soon she would join them, but her sacrifice would ensure that their deaths had not been in vain. The transformation tanks glowed softly in the darkness beyond her quarters, each one containing a human being who had been convinced that giving up their humanity was the path to paradise. Sarah would make sure that no other world suffered the same fate. By morning, the Arcturus facility would be nothing but expanding plasma and debris. The Resistance would have the information they needed to stop similar facilities, and humanity would have one more chance to remain human. It wasn't the victory she had dreamed of when she started this mission, but it was the victory her species needed. Sometimes, Sarah realized, being human meant making choices that no collective intelligence would ever understand. Captain Zara Chen stared at the tactical display aboard the Meridian, watching the Arcturus facility grow larger on their screens. Beside her, Captain Reed gripped his command chair with white knuckles, while Commander Vasquez reviewed the assault plan for the 10th time. Still no word from Sarah? Reed asked, though he already knew the answer. Her last transmission was 18 hours ago, Zara replied. She confirmed the facility's vulnerability points and the deployment schedule. After that, radio silence. The rescue fleet consisted of 8 ships, everything they could gather on short notice. It wasn't nearly enough to assault a facility defended by Catharan battlecruisers. But Sarah's intelligence had given them something better than firepower: knowledge of the station's critical weaknesses. Incoming transmission from the facility, announced the communications officer. They're demanding identification, Commander Vasquez moved to the tactical station. Are the Kytheran ships taking defensive positions? Negative. They're maintaining standard patrol patterns. I don't think they consider us a threat. Zara smiled grimly. That was about to change. All ships begin the approach. Remember, we only get one chance at this. The plan was simple but dangerous. While most of the fleet created a distraction by attacking the facility's outer defenses, Captain Reed would take the modified retribution directly to the station's power core. Sarah's data had revealed that the Arcturus facility used a unique hybrid power system that combined human fusion technology with Kytheran energy crystals. Overloading the fusion reactors would cause the alien crystals to resonate destructively, creating a chain reaction that would destroy the entire station. Beginning attack run, Reed announced over the comm system. May we all live to see tomorrow. The first phase went exactly as planned. Commander Vasquez led 4 ships in a frontal assault on the station's defensive platforms, drawing the attention of the Kytheran patrol ships. Explosions bloomed in space as the defenders scrambled to respond to what appeared to be a desperate but futile attack. Meanwhile, Reed brought the retribution in low and fast, using the station's superstructure to mask his approach. The disguised destroyer slipped past the distracted defenders and docked at a maintenance port near the power core. We're in, Reed reported, beginning infiltration of the power systems. But something was wrong. As Zara watched the tactical display, she noticed that the Kytheran ships weren't responding as aggressively as they should. Their defensive formation was too perfect, their targeting too precise. It was as if they knew exactly what the human ships were going to do. Vasquez, break off the attack, Zara ordered. This feels like a trap. Negative, Captain. We're committed now. If we don't keep them busy, Reed won't have time to reach the power core. That's when the real Kytheran fleet arrived. 6 massive battle cruisers dropped out of hyperspace behind the human ships, their weapons already charging. The defensive engagement had been a setup, designed to draw the resistance fleet into a killing field. All ships evasive maneuvers, Zara shouted, but it was too late. The lead battle cruiser fired, and Commander Vasquez's ship disappeared in a ball of superheated plasma. Inside the Arcturus facility, Captain Reed and his small assault team raced through corridors that seemed strangely empty. The station's human workers had vanished, and even the security systems appeared to be offline. Sir, this doesn't feel right, said Sergeant Martinez, Reed's demolitions expert. Where is everyone? Reed checked his scanner readings. Sarah's intelligence showed heavy security around the power core, but I'm not detecting any guards, human or Kytheran. They reached the central power chamber, a vast cylindrical space dominated by the hybrid reactor system. The fusion cores hummed with barely contained energy, while Kytheran crystals floated in magnetic suspension fields, pulsing with alien light. Start placing the charges, Reed ordered. We have 10 minutes before the overload sequence begins. But as his team spread out through the chamber, Reed noticed something that made his blood run cold. There were human figures standing motionless in the shadows around the reactor cores, their faces turned toward the approaching soldiers. Contact, Sergeant Martinez called out, raising his weapon. Then he stopped, his expression turning from alert to confused. Sir, these people, they're not moving. Reed approached one of the figures, a woman in a Unity Movement uniform. Her eyes were open, but they held the same black depth he had seen in Kytheran eyes. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in his bones. Captain Reed, we have been expecting you. More figures emerged from the shadows, all moving with the same fluid grace he had observed in Kytheran personnel. But these were definitely human, or had been human once. The integration process is remarkable, the transformed woman continued. Your resistance has provided valuable data on human tactical thinking. We are grateful for your contribution to Project Genesis. Reed understood with growing horror that the entire operation had been anticipated. The Kytherans hadn't just captured the facility's personnel. They had transformed them into extensions of the alien collective consciousness. Sir, what are your orders? Sergeant Martinez asked, his weapon trained on the approaching figures. Reed looked at the reactor cores, then at his demolition charges. The overload sequence would still work, but it would take time to activate. Time they might not have. Complete the mission, he said simply, no matter what happens. Outside the station, the battle was going badly for the resistance fleet. 3 ships had been destroyed, and the survivors were being herded into an increasingly tight formation by the superior Kitharan forces. Zara brought the Meridian around in a desperate attempt to break through the enemy line and reach the station. Her ship wasn't equipped for combat, but she had to try to extract Reed and his team. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from inside the station," her communications officer reported. "Put it through." Reed's voice came over the speakers, strained but determined. "Captain Chen, the facility is compromised. The entire staff has been transformed into Kitharan hybrids, but we can still complete the mission. Reed, get your people out of there," Zara ordered. "We'll find another way to stop Project Genesis." "Negative. The deployment ships launch in 6 hours. This is our only chance to stop them." On the tactical display, Zara could see more Kitharan ships arriving. Soon the resistance fleet would be completely surrounded. "Reed, Sarah would never forgive me if I let you die in there." There was a long pause before Reed responded. "Actually, Captain, I think she would understand perfectly. She knew what this mission might cost when she sent us her intelligence." Inside the power chamber, Reed and his team were fighting a running battle against the transformed humans. The hybrids moved with inhuman coordination, but they retained human creativity and unpredictability. Every time Reed thought he had found a safe position to arm the charges, they anticipated his movements. "Sergeant, can you reach the secondary power coupling?" Reed called out over the sound of weapons fire. "Working on it, sir. But these people, they're thinking like us, but faster." Reed realized that brute force wasn't going to work. The hybrids could predict conventional military tactics because they retained human knowledge while gaining Kitharan processing capabilities. But there was one thing they might not anticipate. He thought about Sarah's words about human unpredictability, about the ability to break patterns that alien minds couldn't foresee. The Kitharans believed they had perfected the integration process, but what if their perfection was actually a weakness? "Martinez, forget the charges," Reed ordered. "Start overloading the fusion cores directly. Manual activation, no automated sequences. Sir, that will cause an immediate cascade failure. We won't have time to escape, and that's the idea. The hybrids can predict our escape routes because they think like us, but they can't predict suicide tactics because the collective consciousness values preservation above all else." As Reed began manually overriding the fusion containment systems, he thought about Sarah and the courage it had taken for her to infiltrate this facility alone. She had known from the beginning that some missions required the ultimate sacrifice. The power cores began to destabilize, their harmonics rising to dangerous levels. Around the chamber, the hybrid figures stopped their coordinated attack and stared at Reed with expressions of alien confusion. "This action serves no logical purpose," one of them said. "You cannot escape. Your sacrifice achieves nothing." Reed smiled as the reactor warnings reached critical levels. "That's where you're wrong. You understand human logic, but you've never understood human hope." The Arcturus facility exploded in a cascade of fusion fire and crystalline energy, taking with it the production lines, the research data, and 12 deployment ships loaded with enough aerosol compound to transform 12 worlds. In space, Captain Zara Chen watched the explosion through tears, knowing that Captain Reed and his team had given their lives to buy humanity precious time. The Kitharan fleet pulled back from the expanding debris field, their perfect formation momentarily disrupted by the unexpected loss of their key facility. But the victory was only temporary. Sarah's intelligence had revealed 11 other facilities preparing similar. 6 months after the destruction of the Arcturus facility, Dr. Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Resistance flagship Defiance, watching the final battle of the Kitharan War unfold in the space around Earth itself. Against all odds, she had survived the facility's destruction, rescued by Captain Reed's team in the final moments before the reactor overload. The Earth Defense Fleet hung in desperate formation around humanity's birthworld, their ships outnumbered 3-1 by the massive Kitharan armada. But numbers no longer told the whole story. The intelligence gathered from Arcturus had changed everything. "Sarah, are you ready?" Captain Zara Chen asked from the command chair. Sarah nodded, her hands steady on the modified medical scanner that had become her weapon of choice. Over the past month, she had perfected the technique's first glimpse during their escape from the initial Kitharan patrol. What had started as a desperate improvisation had evolved into a systematic method for disrupting alien technology. Initiating the collective consciousness interference protocol, Sarah announced to the bridge. "Crew, the technique was based on her discovery, that the Catharan collective consciousness operated on specific neural frequencies that could be disrupted by carefully modulated electromagnetic fields. But the real breakthrough had come from understanding that human unpredictability itself could be weaponized. "All resistance cells report ready," Commander Vasquez announced from the tactical station. She had survived the Arcturus battle in an escape pod and returned with even greater determination to see the mission through. Across human space, 12 other resistance fleets were simultaneously attacking the remaining Project Genesis facilities. But this wasn't a conventional military operation. Each attack was deliberately chaotic, using tactics that no rational military mind would consider. Ships broke formation randomly, attacked secondary targets instead of primary ones, and employed strategies that seemed to make no sense. The Catharans, with their perfect logical minds and collective consciousness, couldn't adapt fast enough to counter tactics that defied all conventional wisdom. "Beginning transmission," Sarah said, activating the device she had spent months perfecting. The modified scanner sent out a complex signal that mimicked human neural patterns, but amplified and distorted. To the Catharan collective consciousness, it was like hearing 1,000 human minds screaming different thoughts simultaneously. The alien ships began to waver in their formations as their crews struggled to maintain focus. On the main screen, Zara could see the effects spreading through the Catharan fleet. Ships that had moved with perfect coordination moments before now flew erratic patterns as their pilots fought to filter out the neural interference. "It's working," reported Dr. Park from the science station. "Catharan communication efficiency is down 70% and falling," but Sarah wasn't finished. She had learned something else during her time in the Arcturus facility, something that even the Catharans didn't fully understand about their own biology. "Activating Phase 2, she announced, adjusting the scanner's output to match the resonance frequency of Catharan neural crystals. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Throughout the alien fleet, ships began shutting down as their organic control systems overloaded. The perfectly integrated technology that had made the Catharans so formidable became their weakness when their biological components couldn't process the chaotic input. "Multiple Catharan vessels are going dark," Vasquez reported with obvious excitement. "Their entire command structure is collapsing." Admiral Harrison's voice came over the communication system from the Earth Defense Fleet. "All ships, press the attack. This is our chance to end this war." But Sarah wasn't listening to the Admiral. She was focused on a single Catharan dreadnought at the center of the enemy formation, the ship that had been coordinating the entire invasion fleet. If she could disrupt its control systems permanently, the remaining ships would be left without central coordination. "Zara, I need you to get us closer to the command ship," Sarah said. "I have one more trick to try." Captain Chen didn't hesitate. The Defiance broke from the battle line and accelerated toward the massive Catharan vessel, weaving through the chaotic battle as smaller ships from both fleets engaged in desperate combat around them. "Sarah, what are you planning?" Zara asked as they approached the enemy dreadnought. "The Catharans think they understand human consciousness because they've been studying us for years," Sarah replied, making final adjustments to her equipment. "But they've only seen us under stress, fear, and desperation. They've never experienced what we're capable of when we're truly free." She activated a new program she had been developing in secret, one that broadcast not chaos or fear, but something the Catharan collective consciousness had never encountered: pure human joy. The signal carried the laughter of children playing in gardens, the satisfaction of artists completing masterpieces, the love between families reunited after long separations. It transmitted the feeling of standing on a mountaintop at sunrise, of solving a complex problem through creative thinking, of choosing to help a stranger for no reason other than compassion. The effect on the Catharan dreadnought was unlike anything Sarah had expected. Instead of shutting down, the ship's lights began to pulse in patterns that seemed almost organic. Throughout the vessel, Catharan crew members were experiencing emotions they had never felt before, thoughts that existed outside the rigid structure of their collective consciousness. "What's happening to them?" Dr. Park asked, studying the sensor readings with fascination. "They're learning what it means to be individual," Sarah said softly. "For the first time in their species' history, they're thinking their own thoughts." The revolution spread through the Catharan fleet like wildfire. Ships began breaking away from their formations, not because of system failures, but because their crews were choosing to leave. The collective consciousness that had bound their entire civilization together for millennia was fracturing as individual Kitharans experienced the possibility of personal choice. On Earth below, the remaining Project Genesis facilities shut down as their operators, both alien and human, found themselves unable to continue work that now seemed obviously monstrous. The aerosol compounds that would have transformed billions of humans into collective drones were neutralized by technicians, who suddenly understood the value of individual consciousness. Captain, came a transmission from the Kitharan dreadnought. This is Commander Zethkar. I request permission to speak with Dr. Chen. The voice was different now, hesitant and uncertain in a way that seemed completely unlike the confident alien commander Sarah remembered from Arcturus. This is Dr. Chen, Sarah responded. What do you want to say? I am experiencing thoughts that are mine alone, Zethkar said slowly. For the first time I can see my actions as an individual would see them. What we planned to do to your species, it was wrong. I understand that now. Across the battlefield, Kitharan ships were powering down their weapons and broadcasting surrender signals. Their crews, experiencing individual consciousness for the first time, were overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they had been part of. The war is over, Zara said quietly, hardly believing the words, but Sarah was thinking beyond the immediate victory. No, the war is over, but something new is beginning. The Kitharans will need help learning how to be individuals, and will need to learn how to coexist with a species that's just discovering its own humanity. Admiral Harrison's voice came over the communication system again, but this time he sounded confused and shaken. All ships stand down. The enemy fleet is surrendering. I repeat, the Kitharan fleet is surrendering. What the Admiral didn't know was that his own consciousness had been affected by Sarah's broadcast. The neural pathways that had connected him to the Unity Movement's collective goals were dissolving, leaving him to confront the reality of his own choices for the first time in years. In the months that followed, the galaxy would be transformed in ways no one had anticipated. The Kitharan Empire collapsed as individual members of the species chose their own paths, some seeking redemption for their actions, others simply trying to understand what it meant to exist as separate beings. Humanity emerged from the war not as conquerors, but as teachers, helping their former enemies learn the challenges and rewards of individual consciousness. The Unity Movement dissolved as its members realized they had been as much victims of collective thinking as perpetrators of betrayal. Dr. Sarah Chen became the first ambassador to the new Kitharan Republic, a fragmented but hopeful collection of individuals trying to build a society based on choice rather than compulsion. Her father's dream of protecting human freedom had been realized, but in a way that also extended that freedom to an entire alien species. Standing on the observation deck of the diplomatic station orbiting Earth, Sarah watched Kitharan and human ships working together to dismantle the remaining Project Genesis facilities. The war had been won not through superior firepower or tactical brilliance, but through the simple act of sharing what made humanity most human: the capacity for individual thought, creativity, and choice. The galaxy would never be the same. And for the first time since the war began, that was exactly what everyone hoped for. Humanity had not only survived the greatest threat in its history, but had transformed that threat into an opportunity for unprecedented cooperation and understanding. The secret talents that had shifted the balance in a perilous world turned out to be the most human qualities of all: the ability to think independently, to choose compassion over logic, and to believe that even the most implacable enemy could learn to change. In the end, it was not humanity's weapons or technology that won the war, but its willingness to share the gift of individual consciousness with those who had never known such freedom.